Incredibly excited to have you join us this morning, and whether you're joining us live for another amazing conversation, or you're listening to this, watching a video, or listening to a podcast afterwards, welcome. I'm Charlene Sinjenko. I'm the founder and lead impact officer of Powerhouse Impact Group, and you have arrived around our table, around our fire, for a conversation where we practice deep listening and we gather collective wisdom and see what is meant to be shared with us today. I want to acknowledge that Powerhouse is located, we work, live, and play on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish First Nation on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. And I would like to introduce you to the Powerhouse Braid. If you have not ever been at a Gather for Her, you'll see very quickly that this is an interwoven conversation. It's not an interview. It's not an information session. It's a conversation. It's we're all having coffee this morning, or green juice, as it might be. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the Powerhouse Braid, or the co-host of Gather for Her, and I'll start over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Char. Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm very excited about this conversation with Gail and all of us. And as Char said, this is not an interview. It is a co-created and co-generative conversation. So we don't always know where things are going to go, and that's that place of curiosity. But all of you are welcome here, and I'm grateful that you're here. I am joining you today. Not from my typical place. I am joining you from the roof of my elders. I'm at my mom and dad, visiting my mom and dad right now. So I'm pleased to be here. And I will turn it over to my other co-host and sister Sharon.
Thanks, Christina, and welcome everyone. I am also very excited to be here today. I adore Gail, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And as Christina said, this is not an interview. Christina and Char both said it's not an interview. It's a conversation, a co-created conversation, and we come to some very juicy conversations at these gatherings. And so, welcome. I come to you today from the traditional ancestral territories of the Snuneymuxw and Snuneymuxw First Nations on Vancouver Island. They're the Coast Salish peoples, and I am in Lanceville, BC. And so welcome, everybody, and pass it on to you, Tina.
Thanks, Sharon. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited. It's December 1st. You can kind of tell it's that month. I am thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to dive into the story with you, Gail, in this braided conversation of weaving and listening and pulling through the wisdom in this collective space. My name is Tina O, and I am a story keeper here in the house of Powerhouse. And I hold big hands and big ears, and I listen for the story under the story that we're in. And I'm excited to be here. I'm calling in from Nequelaquam, also known as Bowen Island, on the Coast Salish Sea, on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish people. And their story is in our story. Our story is in their story, and we are all one story today. So thank you for being here. And over back to you, Char, and we'll introduce Gail.
Awesome. So I'd just like to give you just a little tiny background on Gather for Her. how we arrived at today. At the beginning of April in 2020, we started to gather on a weekly basis. We committed to gathering consistently. Powerhouse in the past has done quite a few in-person gatherings, and we committed to the regular practice of building community and deep listening on a weekly basis. So what you're experiencing today, whether this is your first time or your 51st time, is a conversation that is a continuation of collective wisdom. And then we started to add the next aspect. Well, we're getting this continuation of collective wisdom. How are we really integrating it and implementing it? How is it guiding us as change makers, both individually and collectively? And we launched in September of last year, we launched the Leader Path, which is the convergence of leaders from across sectors and countries and purposes. And it is a community of practice where we're integrating and moving forward the wisdom that is gathered here. So today I'm really curious about the wisdom that'll come through, and I would like to introduce our very special guest, Gail Stepanik-Keber. And I'm going to resist giving you a really personal introduction, but I'll probably end with that. I want to tell you that Gail's purpose is to inspire individuals and businesses to articulate and design their purpose so they have more oomph and impact. She believes purpose is of the utmost importance and says that people are feeling disengaged, isolated, lost, uncertain, and fatigued. And the great resignation is a symptom of all of these things. If individuals are feeling this within their beings, they've lost their oomph, their sense of aliveness. And as a result, they're not having the positive impact on those around them that they could, on their loved ones, their families, their organizations, and the communities they touch. We need to get back to reimagining and visualizing that ripple. It's like the butterfly effect. Good morning to my amazing friend, Gail, an amazing mother, fellow horse lover, and incredible corporate leader that has done a very amazing job of equal parts spirituality, equal parts depth, wisdom, and relevance, sharp, quick wit, and intelligence in a way that I greatly admire. And we're so glad to have you here. Thank you for being here, Gail.
Wonderful. Wow, Shar, thank you. And thank you to each of you in the braid for welcoming me. I'm here seated in Treaty 6 territory, and my husband, my daughter, and I are grateful to work and play on 94 acres of blessed land that was traveled by many ancestral Métis and First Nation people. And yes, it's just a joy to be here.
So Gail, I'm just wondering, to kind of kick off the conversation, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your story, a little bit about what kind of brought you here, the thread of the story that brought you here today, and where we're landing in that story today, and where you are curious about the story going from here. I didn't read your formal bio on purpose, and I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Shar. And I also have been reflecting about, what brought me to this point in my life. And I believe that we're born into the world with two things. One is our personality, and one is our purpose. And landing into that purpose early will give us what I call joy, happiness, oomph, aliveness. My name, Gail, represents happiness and gay and yeah, just being well in the world. And I believe that our names are keepers of our soul work that we're meant to do. And when I reflect on my journey, I go back to a grade 2 scribbler that I didn't find not to, I found quite recently. And it said that I wanted to be a social worker. And I smiled at that because I haven't followed a traditional social worker path. But I do believe that the work that I'm set out to do in this world and have done in this world is around social purpose, and it is around impact and contribution. Everything from, I think, being curious about other cultures and moving to Quebec City in my third year of university, to growing up in a very small rural community where you pretty much had to get along with the 250 people around you. And then after that university experience, moving to Malaysia and Indonesia and traveling through Nepal and India and understanding people. And then interwoven in that was the business Gail, the curious business Gail that wanted to, I believe, make an impact in the world, which led me to managing a marketing communications company in Kuala Lumpur, which then led me back to Canada and into a cooperative movement, a financial cooperative, which is such a different business model than the traditional private sector model. I mean, it's rooted in the member owner versus the customer. And I believe that, the 21 years that I spent there was a servant leadership path that I was meant to take. And my last role at Service Credit Union, where I was at, was Purpose and Innovation Officer, which I believe took everything that I knew, which was strategy, governance, vision, people, like everything that I loved about business, and moved it into a Purpose and Innovation Officer space, which then made me realize that I need to take more stock of my life and make more impact and be a maverick in this world. So that's kind of in this complete circle, I feel, that's brought me to today. That's how I'm weaving it into the debut of Trinity Solutions, of Gail stepping into the purpose world and being a purpose enthusiast.
Going to turn it over to the co-hosts and see whether that brings up anything for you. Maybe we'll start with you, Christina, if that's okay.
Sure. I just want to say a couple personal things, and that is I got to know Gail through, she was introduced through Powerhouse through the First Steps program, and it's really easy to be drawn to her joy and her joy of life. And I loved what you said about your name. I think that it's very reflective. But what was impactful for me was actually meeting you in person in Gibson's, meeting you in person. And what was so interesting is that you embody both your personality and your purpose, and that integration of those two. Like, I loved what you said about that we are born with our personality and our sense of purpose, and you actually embody that, and all of us felt it in your presence. A couple of us were like, we get to meet Gail in person, and she's so much more than any of us imagined. And you have a very generous presence to you. And so your work in the world now, and all the ways that have led you into that work, I see a level of mastery. I feel like I experienced a level of mastery coming from you in experiencing you personally, that you've reached that level of mastery. Very, but also from a way of generosity and humility, and yet still mastery. So I'm really grateful to know you, and I'm curious, I guess, about how well, actually, I'm curious as to what you described what led you here, but what how does your work now ripple out as a change maker?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you. I think the ripple is by connecting with more. I'm more businesses, more individuals. And granted, I'm one person, but if I truly vision out Trinity Solutions, I'm but one purpose enthusiast. There's many of us, but I see Trinity Solutions growing to have many purpose purveyors or people that help other people find their purpose. And on the corporate side, if a business can truly step into its purpose, it then aligns or taps into what aligns every individual to that company's purpose. And that in itself has the ripple power. And so my role in that is to be the servant leader and help companies and help individuals pull that out, state it, put it out there like a broadcast, like a megaphone, because in that there is action. And without declaring it and then putting the behaviors behind it and then putting an implementation plan together, it's nothing, right? And I believe that's the role that I'll have in the world. And I'm not alone. I mean, this is purpose work is, I think the meaning of life work has been in existence of humanity. And I feel that I'm surrounded now via this greatness grid, that's what Charlene calls it, of people that are doing this work. And it is so energizing and so needed in the world because many people just do not have a sense of purpose. And I know myself naming it and calling it out gave me a lift that I had not experienced before. I'm energized. When I talk about it, I get energized. But also the company, like Service Credit Union, when we landed on our purpose, the energy in the room with the executive team was palpable, like palpable. I still wish I had a camcorder that I could have just asked them. When we asked them, what did financial fitness mean to them? Um, it was incredible. Tears, emotion. And that's how it should be. Like your purpose should be emotional. So I led us a bit of a stray, but yeah, Christine, I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Gail. I want to jump in a little bit because Christina named something about you, about when they met you and when she met you in person. I was there. We were all in a celebration of the 8 years of Powerhouse and Deanne Whalen coming home, and it was a big night. And I had the opportunity to meet you in person too. And Christina said this thing about you were so much bigger than 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 we had experienced so far. And she had done first steps with you, and first steps, of course, is all expansion work on the inside. So that's already big work. So what clued in for me there, I want to just connect back to your statement of the Great Resignation, or rather Char's introduction. And I'm wondering what you notice about organizations, or in organizations as change makers, or individuals as change makers, as they claim that purpose. And I know a piece of your work is living that purpose, which I think is that thing that Christine is naming as that so much bigger. And what you notice about that, and if you think if there's a connection between knowing your purpose and sidestepping or just skipping it entirely, the Great Resignation that we're all in. Just what comes up for you in that? Because we're seeing it everywhere. People ditching their jobs, and for lots of good reasons. What's that about, do you think, in connection to purpose?
Yeah, absolutely, Tina. I feel that is about. I feel that's about the brain. Frankly, it goes back to neuroscience and the limbic and the cortex. There is science behind knowing your purpose and how that leads to happiness. And no different than endorphins and dopamines and serotonin and oxytocin. All of these I would say neurology and those chemicals or in our body are so important. So I do believe that when people haven't stepped into their purpose or they feel disconnected from the organization, their body's not firing properly. And I feel that that is a big part of this great resignation, where people have gotten a taste of something else through this isolation period. They've had time to reflect. They've had time to sit with themselves in a different way. And something is coming up that's saying, I'm not feeling authentic. I'm not feeling right in this world. I'm not connected to the CEO or my manager. I'm not connected to my family. I'm not connected to community. And in that, I feel there's a voice inside that says, I need to get back on track. And I'm not saying all, but I feel that that's where that's coming from. This ability to reflect and stop is scary and needed. I mean, and people are stepping into that. And I think that's what's happening. And that's why they're getting closer to their own truth and their own, what I call your soul's purpose. And that this is who I am and this is where I'm moving. I really do believe that it comes back to neuroscience and that internal being.
So I just want to circle in on, so when a company knows its purpose, which in my own languaging as a story person, it's like that soul story, right? When a company knows that, are you suggesting then and lives it, then all of the team members, employee, like the whole thing, all of the ecosystem of the people in it can hear it and feel it and then and resonate with it? Is that where you're, like, their soul story kind of lines up with the organizations, maybe?
Yes, and not necessarily for all, because I feel that once a company steps into its purpose, its why, most companies live in the what and the how. That's where most companies live. This is what we do. This is who we are, but why do I exist as an organization? Like, if you just think of an organization as a person, why does that person exist? What is its personality? Like, if any of you have done the Myers-Briggs, organizations have personalities just like people. Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Are they thinking? Are they feeling? Are they perceiving? Are they judging? Are they sensing? Are they intuitive? And I do believe that not all people, once a company has declared its purpose, may be aligned. I think majority will, if that organization has been living its true existence. Like, I'll use Service Credit Union as the example. The one that I know best is the fact that when we declared shaping member financial fitness and ultimately to build more resilient and prosperous communities, that resonated with the majority of the organization. But calling it out was so important because we had not done that before. And all of a sudden, financial fitness is relatable to me. Everyone has finances. Finances are emotional. We didn't treat them as emotions before that. So all of a sudden, we were talking about the emotion of money. Well, money is joyful, it's shameful, it's embarrassment, it's all of those things. And it spoke to the individual in everyone that was in the organization. So I do believe that when an organization calls it out, they will have onboarders. I'm a big believer of the third rule, and maybe that's my Trinity Solutions, but a third of the people will be, yoo-hoo, this is excellent. A third of the people will be, tell me more. And a third will be, not so interested. I call it like the 30%, 30%, 30%. So we always focus on the 2/3, like focus on the 2/3, not the 1/3 that's saying, time out, don't want that.
I'd like to jump in for a second. So you mentioned the thirds, and so forgive me if you mentioned this at the beginning. I lost my video and I was trying to find it, so I wasn't completely listening to your introduction, Gail. Did you explain what Trinity Solutions is about, like the 3 pillars of your business?
I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, so Trinity Triangle for me, I've been living with this for 20 years. I've been writing about the Trinity and the Triangle, I think it's all been coming to this. And for me, it's many things. I mean, there's a spiritual sense in that for sure. I mean, if you think about the Holy Trinity, I am a spiritualist. I'm a leader in that thinking, but I do believe that for me, Trinity is about purpose at the top, innovation as the means to implement the purpose, and the third point is impact, for impact. Frankly, I don't want to be dealing with individuals nor companies that aren't in a higher service than themselves. Because I believe that today's world is about servant leadership and letting our egos go. And that's a hard thing to do. For me, your ego gets in the way and then a lot happens. But that's the meaning of Trinity. And I could tell you more stories. I mean, Trinity has many applications, but that in the sense of Trinity Solutions is purpose plus innovation for impact, or equals impact.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm glad I didn't miss it. So I'm curious, in your purpose work then, and thank you for also mentioning you don't want to work with organizations or people who aren't on that higher frequency, that understanding of purpose. Because my question was going to be, how do you deal with people, in particular organizations? Because organizations typically, as we've gotten to know them, that it's all business. It's all business. It's all capitalism. It's the dollar. There's no room in the business for spirituality. There's no room for purpose, as we want purpose to be realized. How have you, and I know your business is new, but you, like you say, you've been driven to this for 20 years. How do you educate or articulate purpose work to organizations or people who seem to be interested, or that you feel would be better served by understanding it better?
Sharon, thank you for that question. Well, first of all, I've been in this space of, I guess, what we've been calling corporate social responsibility for 20 years now. That was part of my portfolio. And what delights me today is I believe the purpose economy is alive and well. And the reason why companies, not all, but those that are in this purpose economy have seen that living a purpose or understanding the why of the business is profitable. And I think before, companies used to say, I will make a lot of money and then I will do good, versus this merger of doing good and stepping into the purpose are one. You can't force them apart. Like they're together. Purpose and profit are one. They're synonymous. This is a big awakening for companies. But where I get delighted is I'm a board member. I love governance work. I really feel that boards have a responsibility in this area of social purpose and purpose. It is there. It's being talked about. The Institute of Corporate Directors, corporate purpose has been on the agenda for almost actually every calendar year, every conversation we step into. I was at a distinguished directors dinner last week, and that was the topic. Profiling a company that had stepped into purpose. And then our dialogue at the director table was around, why is it that business leaders are not stepping into social purpose? So I feel that this is energetically, companies are moving away from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. The USA is a great case in point. 92 companies led by people like Larry Fink of BlackRock have said, if you are not about doing good in this world, you're not part of this corporate movement. And holding people accountable, like Larry Fink held Apple accountable for looking at what the screen does to children, and which is where the screen time, timer came in. And I feel this is so important but where I'm delighted is companies are stepping into it. Where I also see a bit of a fallback, though, many companies are stepping into purpose, similar to how they stepped into, green or environment. And I see a bit of purpose washing happening, whereby companies have declared a purpose, but there's no forsake of what, why, what is my greater calling in the world? Am I linking this back up to the UN sustainable goals? There's 17 goals. Your company can align to one of them, and really looking at how to measure impact. That is where I'm seeing some companies declaring a purpose, but it's a statement, or they say that they're stepping into a purpose, but it's blank on the other end. And unless you're doing it for, a social impact or a higher cause, I frankly, I don't believe that you're being intentful around purpose. So the companies I want to work for are the ones, or work with, are the companies that want to do good in this world.
Gail, I want to jump in because you led to my next question that's kind of brewing in my head, and I'm genuinely curious about this. I'm curious about the role of no and the role of boundaries in purpose work, and I loved what you said. There's one thing around ticking a box, and there's another thing about really setting some parameters. Can you talk about how you lead individuals and businesses into that embodiment over just a cursory agreement? How do you deepen that?
Yeah, Christina, I feel it's a journey. I really do. I feel it takes time. I mean, it takes time to shift the vernacular internally, but the beginning of that is by telling story. And I know, Powerhouse, this is your world, is around telling story. And we spent a lot of time at service just telling the stories of the impact of members that we made around financial fitness, and then looking at, how do we measure that? Like, how do we truly measure this? Because companies can get caught up in B Corp certification or UN sustainable goals and just checking boxes, but are you truly deepening the work in the organization? And the biggest group that can affect the change in organizations are middle managers. Middle managers is where it all happens, the magic happens. And truly, if those middle managers, and even the word middle kind of, I shouldn't even be saying that way because it bothers me, but I'm going back to your systems work, Christina, of tops, middles, and bottoms. But the middle, to me, that's the heart of the organization. If you've onboarded those managers and leaders, wow, the influence and effect that they can have. But it is a journey. It's not, you declare your purpose, and then it is, how do you use innovative thinking to think it differently throughout your organization, and even shift the vernacular of the language. For example, when we reported out on our loan book, we would have it in numbers or percentage. Well, what if you just shifted it to not necessarily numbers or dollars of mortgages that you've given out, but the number of homes that you have placed people in? That immediately shifts the narrative. And I do believe that that is where companies that are stepping into purpose go: the tangible and the intangible, the financial, the non-financial. And setting the parameters. Sorry, you mentioned about parameters. I almost feel that it's opposite. It's almost like it's boundaryless, but then you use your purpose statement as your decision, the part of your decision tree, Does this align to our purpose? Is our strategy augmenting our purpose? If I am living my purpose, Gail, to help others articulate their purpose, if I'm living that, then what am I doing in my board work? Like when I'm joining a board now, I think, does this fulfill my purpose? And the 3 boards that I sit on, they do. They fulfill my purpose. But I'm using that very much as a litmus test. And I would encourage anyone on this, listening to this recording or here with us today, to really think about your purpose statement, and then, what decisions are you making in your life? And is it feeding it, or is it starving it? That's what I would say.
Now, Shar might be jumping in next anyway, because maybe our brains are aligned, or we'll see. But what I really pulled up on was the middle manager. Okay, I know we don't like that term. I get it. However, what it represents is middle, and coming back to thirds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you know, in Powerhouse, media is the beat of our drum, and in our work in the world, it's about shifting the narrative and all the different spokes of the great big sun that we are, and all the rays that we do that. We're shifting the narrative, and it's the middle, as you say, or the most relatable, as you said earlier, around purpose work, is how the middle moves. And when the middle catches something, that's when things tip. It's not when the top catches it, whatever that means, or whatever the small percentage catches it. It's when the middle catches it that things tip. And I'm really curious what you, and I know I didn't prep you on this, so I apologize. I'm really curious about purpose work and media and change makers and grabbing the mic or grabbing the camera, and what you see or feel or notice in this world of media that we're in now, and purpose work, and where that, what are you had to guess, again, I'm throwing you in, but where does that take you?
Oh, yeah, great question. And frankly, I reflected and mirror it back to Powerhouse and the work that you're doing. And I love, Charlene, your quote of, who are we celebrating? Like, who are we truly celebrating? Who's in the news today? Are we celebrating change makers? Are we celebrating impact makers? Are we celebrating criminals? Are we celebrating people that are destructive to the world? And I know that if the story can shift, like even to 80% of what we hear in the world, I mean, not the world's not always good, but if we were to shift the news to being more positive. My husband and daughter and I watch a segment every morning before she goes to school, and it's called A Good For. And it's 4 feel-good moments, be it videos, be it a bit of information, that just leave us in a good place starting our day. But on the news, there are deaths, there are murders, there are atrocities. And balancing that, how do we balance that? So I do feel that the work of purpose is shining a light on those stories. And again, I think that Adidas and their plastic recycling of their shoes, has become a very profitable business for them. That story in itself is a story to be shared. They've taken garbage from the ocean and created running shoes out of it, and it's one of their top selling, products. And how do we shine a light on more of that so more people are doing that? I certainly want to do that. I want to highlight the middle, the people. I love Ellen and I love Oprah, but at the end of the day, what about someone in this room? Let's just lift them up and have them share their story. And to me, that's the middle. The middle is where the tipping point, the shift will happen. That's what I'm excited about. And I do believe it's happening. I believe maybe it's because I'm just It's like you buy a new car and you only see that brand of car. Maybe that's where the world I'm living in. I'm only seeing all the great impact media stories out there, but there's something else happening in the world. There is a tipping point happening.
I would like to jump in and I want to just take us through a quick exercise of one of the most compelling tools or conversations that Gail and I have ever had, because I also have been in a purpose space for 2 decades. And so what's different now? What is different that's going to help us over this tipping point? And I've learned it from my friend Gail. You're absolutely right. Organizations can get stuck on the what and the how. And so we do a lot of great work to articulate and express the what. And it's great. And it goes in the annual report and it's yay, we've created the what. But that's very important. We have to express it first. And of course, Simon Sinek in the last decade is really tuned us all up to the why. It's awesome. But what Gail has taught me is the importance of the who. And I want to bring you to that for your own selves today as a takeaway. Gail has taught me to think about the trinity of who. Who are you doing this for? Why? Who are you getting up every morning? And I'll share my who with you because there are 3. And I can trace it back to the very beginning of Powerhouse. We build strong women who lead 20 years ago. My who is my maternal grandmother. She is a woman that I never met, and she lived through the residential school. The whole experience of that. So whenever I get on my high horse that I can't get through or over something, I connect with her. She's very close to me. My second who is Mother Earth. She's my present who. And trust me, she's with me daily right now, in the wind, on the earth, in the sunshine, and in the incredible downpours that my province is currently experiencing. But who is my future who? Who's keeping me just as lit up now as then, when we first started? And I told Gail this. My who is the foster care system, young Indigenous woman who's just adulting out of foster care. May she have the same hope and light that I've been given in the gift of my life. I share that little story with you because that's a takeaway. Figure out your who. And Gail, I'm just wondering if you can say a little more about that, because when we're decolonizing business practices, we have to push past the why. We've talked about the why. We've talked about the what. We've talked about the how. But I'm curious in the innovation and what's next. Like I'd love to just open that up a little bit.
Oh, Charlene, there's so much in that. But you know what? When you said that, I want to share with you something that rocked my world on Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th. And Indigenous wisdom is speaking to my soul in a way that is so profound. And I believe that the who for me, that wisdom is connected back to my matriarchal grandmother, to my family, to my future who, which is the 18 to 29-year-olds that are feeling lost in this world. But I want to talk about Maurice Sinclair's CBC interview that I listened to on that day. So think about Maurice Sinclair as the man who brought the story of the residential school to Canada, the man who believed this was his purpose. His purpose was to take his legal background and his senator background and turn it into something. He asked 4 questions. He said, answer 4 questions as a child. Where do I come from? Who are my ancestors? But more importantly, who are my ancestors' heroes? That's really important question. Who were my ancestors' heroes? The second question, where am I going? What happens to me when I die? My body, my spirit. My purpose work does a bit of this in my framework with individuals. The Indigenous say that you go back to the Creator. The third question he asks is, what am I here for? What is my purpose? What am I born to do? What is part of my understanding? What is my name? And at the moment of conception, you're being conceived because the Creator is sending you out into the world to have a purpose. So what is that purpose? And, name that spirit. I mean, that's part of the Indigenous way. The last question that you mentioned, Shar, is who am I? Who am I? And the totality of it all, of who I am. And the who am I is around, he mentions you may not know it until right before you die, who you were. Who was that soul that came into this body? Who am I? And those four questions connected to all the work that I'm doing in such a profound way. The who, the why, the what, the how, when, like now, we're going to do it now. All of us are, now's the time, creating that sense of urgency and stepping into it. And I just feel this beauty and this connectivity of how we are going to shift the paradigms that aren't serving us anymore. Like why do companies act the way they do? Why do they exit executives who have served for 10 to 20 years and kick them out the door and don't even give them time to say goodbye to their colleagues, to their employees? Why do we do that? That's patriarchal, that's colonization, that's BS in my mind. Like, we've got to treat people better. We're humans. And as Diane Whalen said, right, Tina, 0.01% of all living on the planet are humans. 99.9% of all living is not human. It's Mother Nature. It's plants, birds, ocean, and I think there's something very much that we need to step into there. Whew, I just went on a soapbox.
Yeah, you take that soapbox. You take it. You take it. You go. I want to circle us into OOMPH before our hour is up, and knowing that sometimes, when a change maker arrives at an acronym, we can often think, oh, that's just that easy way for us to remember her. But I believe that all of the pieces we've had in this conversation are leading to this acronym that you have called OOMPH. And I'm wondering if you can share it with us.
Oh, yes. And I thank Tina for helping me get to the root of this. So sometimes it's not easy to see yourself and you need others to reflect you back. And I love that Powerhouse does that for me. OOMPH. The first O is own it. Own your purpose. Like put it on here. I'll just show you mine. And I think it's really important. Part of my framework is I help people get to a deliverable, a statement. Put it on your phone, tuck it in your sock, own it. The second O is really open up to innovative thinking and the human centricity and design thinking of innovation. It is such an amazing tool and offering. And the M is measure it. What's measured gets done, and measuring it, everything's measurable. And you can create your own measurements as organizations, as individuals. Measurement is so important. The P is put people, profits, and planet in the same bucket. Why have environmental scans in business excluded the environment? Why isn't Mother Nature in an environmental scan? So people, profit, planets, put them in the same bucket. And the H is help. Help for happiness, you could say help humanity, but it's help. And that's going to connect with the neuroscience of your brain, and you're going to feel better in the world because you have helped. That's oomph.
And just to connect the dots, that's purpose, right? That's
You
that's
bet.
the measurable. That's your M. That's your measurable of navigating purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. And it sounds to me that the first one, even if all we did was start there, everything else would potentially trickle down, and with support from you. But that first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Own
Gail.
it.
You talked about, holding up a mirror, right? So that you can see yourself. And I'm wondering, what's the mirror that you want to hold up to those that are listening right now?
Wow. I would say, like, step into what are your superpowers when you look in the mirror? What are your gifts, your offerings? And then what are you truly longing for? What's calling you to do something more? And what can't you shake? Like what's always sort of there it's there. You can't shake it, and you want to bring it to the present.
Sharon, I'm really curious where this brings you. We'll give Gail's phone a chance to ring, but Sharon, I'm really curious where this conversation brings you from an Indigenous lens. I touched on where it brought me, but I was curious where it brought you as we start to come to a close.
Thanks, Shar. So at the beginning, Gail, you mentioned that we are born with our personality and our purpose. And so then there are many people in the world that would disagree with that they don't know their purpose, and their personality is developed as we go along. But I absolutely believe that is true. So what do you do with the people that? How do you help the people that don't know what their purpose is?
Yeah, you know what? For me, I take them through a bit of a story of their life to help them perhaps identify where there is a thread. Because I do believe if you have them reflect back on their life, there is a purpose element, and that's part of my framework. Without getting into it too much, I review the chapters of their life, and then also how they be in the world. What have they been doing in the world? And then what makes their heart sing? Like truly, what gets them so curious, and what's getting them out of bed? And frankly, there will always be people that will debunk this work, and that's okay. My focus is going to be, as I said, on the 2/3 that are wanting to step into this work. And if you think to the back of time, I mean, purpose is rooted obviously in Indigenous thinking and being. The Mayans, if you go back to Mayans, but just from the beginning of life, like I think there's been lots of fun and not so fun movies about the meaning of life. But some people are also scared. I think there's an element of fear of stepping into one's purpose.
Yeah, the unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's fair to say then that we come into this world knowing our purpose, but then we forget because of the conditioning that we've been given throughout our lives. We forget that purpose. When you had said that, though, at the beginning, it reminded me of that. You must have heard that story about the young child who had a newborn baby brother or sister, and wanted to speak to the sibling alone, and whispered in the baby's ear, "Tell me about God. I'm starting to forget." And like, to me,
wow.
It was quite the story, and it just the work that you do just for me reminds me that that we need to remember, like some of us are, and I would say that the Great Resignation and the awakening that we are experiencing, that the cosmic consciousness is all part one and the same thing, right? Uh, the resignation is happening because people are starting to awaken and starting to remember, and they're not necessarily knowing, okay, I know my purpose, but there's this, like you say, there's this calling, there's something that's niggling at them that's, okay, I'm here for something deeper than what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's so profound, Sharon. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I mean, this conversation has been pretty amazing.
All right, it's that time. Shard, is there anything that you want to say before I close us? Is there anything that's present on your heart?
I just wanted just a deep gratitude. It's really, for me, the awakening and the remembering are dancing with me right now. And just again, what do we need to be brave to actually embody the behaviors necessary to really truly live our purpose and breathe it like at a cellular porous level. And thank you for being here to have the conversation.
Gail, how about you? Anything you need to say to close this time?
Yeah, I feel deep gratitude as well for everyone listening in. And, I do believe that this purpose economy, the donut economy, some people are calling it, is emerging, being called out for greater collective consciousness. And it just feels there's something, a stir. And I'm just happy to be a part of it, and proud that I stepped away from what is was and is an amazing executive career for me, but I'm stepping into it to impact more, to touch more companies, to help more people. And if we can all step into our oomph, woohoo, the world's going to be a really fun place.
Yay.
Yeah, it is. Thank you,
I'd
Gail.
like to add, I want to thank you, Gail, for the work that you do, because as I'm noticing in my MBA program, there are more organizations becoming socially responsible, right? We need you. We need more of that thing to help get the wheels turning, to help, because as you know, that ripples out. And so just continue to do that lovely work, that amazing work that you're doing. And I believe that, in even a year from now, we're going to be able to see a dramatic difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I want to honor our time, and I also want to honor that time is a construct that we create. And I'm just noticing that everyone here has checked out, checked out as in like shared their clothes. And I want to give Christina a chance to close as well in the way that she feels she needs to.
Oh, thank you, Tina. I'm so grateful to all of you and to everyone listening. And one of the things I would urge everyone is see yourself in this. You are here for a purpose, and I want to remind you to remember. It's an act of remembering. So I invite each one of you to remember this and hold the mirror. May you feel like this conversation has held the mirror up to who you are. So thank you so much, Gail.
Oh, thank you all. And I hope that most on the call join the Wisdom Circle next week to continue this discussion. I really hope that they join us.
Yes. So thank you, everyone, for being with us today on Gather. What you've just experienced is a fire circle conversation of weaving, of wisdom harvesting. And we are at Powerhouse, a house of leaders for global impact, using media as the beat of our drum. And we gather on the leader path as change makers. And if this is a conversation that has really called on your heart, know that there is a community here that speaks your language, gets your heart story. We're here for you. Next week is our wisdom circle, where we also have a conversation about what is the leader path, if this is something that is calling to you. So thank you for being with us today. Happy December 1st, all in your holiday season. And we will see you next week with so much love. I thank the story of us, the story of all, and the story in between, in the spaces of us. Thank you for being here. See you next week.